name is George David. I went into the Army in 1951. I served during the Korean conflict. I was inducted in Kentucky. I was part of the 101st Airborne Division, the Screaming Eagle. I took my basic training with them. I went on to Camp Polk, Louisiana. I became a corporal. I was an ammunition specialist. I went to Aberdeen, Maryland, took my training as an ammunition specialist, and was discharged after the Korean War ended in 1953.
Well, my name is Edward Good. During the war, I started as a medic in 1943, went out to Hawaii, worked in a hospital there for a little while, and then came back to the States. I got involved then in a program called the Army Specialized Training Program. They sent a lot of young soldiers to college for a while, mostly to keep the colleges from dying during the war. That program ended in the spring of 1944. So I went, and after that I went to parachute school and eventually went to Europe as a member of the 17th Airborne Division. Participated in the last big airborne operation of the war called Operation Varsity. We jumped over the Rhine. Then in 1950, I was recalled to the Army and spent a year at Fort Campbell, Kentucky with the 11th Airborne Division.
Okay, I'm Ashley Richardson, and I was in the United States Army, and I served at Walter Reed Army Medical Center as an Army nurse, and I served as a captain in the United States Army. I stayed stateside. I never went to an occupied area. And I was in under the President Eisenhower era. And I did get to see President Eisenhower. Actually shook hands with him when he came in for a physical. And I served from 1958 to 1961 at the Walter Reed Army Medical Center as a registered nurse. It was just wonderful to be in the presence of the President of the United States at that time. And he always had a smile as he was coming down. And all of us young nurses at that time was just in awe to be that close to someone of that stature. And I remember when I went in for my basic training, and I had no idea what to look for, but I soon found out because one of my first entities for the registered nurses to do was to do a tracheotomy on a goat. And you know how long a goat neck is, and that was a frightening experience for me. And then the maneuvers that I had to go through was first in the cow pasture. So I really got a good indoctrination to meet in the force that came in the Army. But I really did enjoy it, I appreciate it, and the Army served us well. But my main honor go out to the veterans who fought in those occupied areas. And I just want to give honor to those troops who were killed just a few days ago. Thank you.
Royce Thompson. I was in the United States Air Force, 8th Air Force. I was a flight engineer on a B-24. You're the mechanic on the bomber. You assist the pilot and the co-pilot. You stand on the flight deck, call out the airspeed, your landing speed, see that the wheels are up and down, and anything on the plane, turn on the auxiliary power units, change the gas. 18 months. Or I was in there 4 years all total. I was in England 18 months. I'm English myself, so it's a beautiful country, and the people over there are a little bit behind us, that's all. But they're nice people. I got out in 1945, after the war was over in Europe. I enjoyed it. I mean, I never was hurt, and I had a good time over there, really.
My name is George Kuzmanovich. I was a gunnery sergeant in the United States Marine Corps, serving in World War II. overseas in the Pacific, Solomon Islands, Guam, Okinawa. Also recalled to active duty years later, after my retirement, and went down to train troops in the Carolinas. And that's about it.
Louis Cordes. I was in the Army Air Force, World War II, in India and Burma, which was a theater of war there with China, Burma, India. And I was aviation engineers, and we built a couple air bases over there, one in India, one in Burma. One in India was the first B-29 base there.
My name is Donald Rohde. I was in the United States Navy Air Corps during World War II. I served 3 years in the Pacific. We covered under Task Force Unit 58 with Chester Nimitz. We covered Saipan, Tinian, Guam, Peleliu, Leyte Straits, and Okinawa during our time in the Pacific. I was serving on the USS Ben Franklin, and we went from Hawaii to Okinawa on the USS Ben Franklin, and it was at that point we took a 1,000-pound bomb on our decks, and my flight skipper, he took off with his squadron, thank God for that, just prior to the landing of that bomb. And when we came back, we saw nothing but smoldering ruins of the USS Ben Franklin. When we asked Chester Nimitz, where do we park our plane? We're almost out of fuel, and we have to put down someplace. And he said, go to CV-19, which is the USS Hancock, and see how well you can get your plane down safe and sound. So that's precisely what we did. During that period of time, during the Battle of Marianas Islands, we had news from the submarine in the Philippines that the Japanese were sending a task force out to intercept us from invading Saipan. So we got together 262 of our planes from our carriers, and we went out and met them. And this became known as the Marianas Turkey Shoot. And we shot down 405 of their planes, and I was able to get between 5 and 9 of myself. So I guess that could be classified as a real wingman. But as far as I was concerned, I was protecting my pilot, and that's all I was concerned with. I was so proud to be able to serve in the Navy Air Corps on the carrier. And the fellow that I served with, Bob Russell, he was my officer when I was taking gunnery training down in Jacksonville, Florida. And we lost each other until such time as I was motioned to come aboard the USS Ben Franklin. And at that time, when I saluted this officer, deck officer, I looked up, and here was Bob Russell. It was quite a coincidence. And he said, now you wonder why you're on here this carrier? Because I selected you. You are going to be my gunman. So you make sure that you protect me, and I'll protect you. I served, I thought, very well, and I was proud to do it. It was quite an experience. I grew up from just below 18 years of age to 20 years of age when I finally ushered out at Grosse Ile Naval Base.
Norman Gaynor, U.S. Navy, right after World War II. I wound up in San Francisco after training in Chicago. Took a train all the way to Frisco. It took 5 days. And the training helped me to work on LSTs. So when we got to Frisco, a bunch of us got into LSTs, and we took them out of Frisco down the Pacific through the Panama Canal yet, and wound up in New Orleans, and we docked the 5 LSTs and filled them full of ammunition that's deteriorating, and we took them out to the middle of the Caribbean, took it out to the deepest part of the water, opened up the LST doors, and pushed all the ammunition outside. We did that 5 times, and that was something. And then my captain says, your time is up. You either stay in the reserves or go in the regular Navy. I says, I'll stay in the reserves. He says, okay, you go home then. So I said goodbye to all the girls in the ports and got on the train and all the way to Detroit and loved it, going home.
My name is Luigi Martini, and I served in European World War II. Went to Southampton, England, down to Le Havre, France, and into Germany. And I went over as a replacement and was a medic to the infantry of the 100th Division. And we served there till the war ended in Europe, and then we were scheduled to go to Japan, and then they signed the armistice, and so we didn't go to Japan, luckily. But I did stay in Europe and in the Army of Occupation. So I served there almost 2 years, and then I came home.
My name is Bob Harala. I served in Korea from 52 to 54 in the United States 7th Infantry Division, 31st Field Artillery Battalion. I served in Kuma Valley, Chorwan, Munsani, and Pork Chop Hill. I'm really proud to have served, and some place that I'd like to have been, but I'd never care to go back. But I think every man and woman, if they get a chance to serve, I think it's really an honor. After it's over, you're so glad that you did. Another thing I wanted to add was that I never heard of anybody that I was associated with that went off to Canada to avoid the draft. So that was something that I thought was really important and good that my era came from. Well, we were in direct support of the infantry at Pork Chop Hill. So I was about 1.5 miles behind the lines. In front of us were the 105s, and in front of them were the Yak Yaks, and I was in 155, so I was about 1.5 miles behind the lines. But we got shelled, we got our share of, and we had to move every 45 days, so their intelligence wouldn't pick up our location. But when they did, they would shell us, and then we'd have to move real quick.
Hi, my name is Lee Shawman. I was a lieutenant during the Vietnam era, stationed with the Corps of Engineers at Fort Belvoir, Virginia. I enjoyed my time in the Army, mainly because I didn't have to leave the country. In the Army's infinite wisdom, they stationed me 16 miles south of the U.S. Capitol in case they needed to have anybody to protect all of our illustrious senators and representatives. But I enjoyed my time. I spent the whole 2 years at Fort Belvoir, Virginia, and I was a lieutenant in the Corps of Engineers, learned how to construct airfields, roads, bridges, and eventually I was assigned to my own branch that taught high PSI air compressors, maintenance of the Nike missile elevators, and basic electronics to the recruits that needed to maintain the Nike facilities. I enjoyed my time in the Army and was in charge of the Nike missile branch that taught high PSI air compressors, elevator maintenance, and basic electronics to young recruits coming in the Army so that they could maintain the Nike missile sites.
My name is Skip Williams. I served in the Navy during the Korean War. I was stationed in Norfolk, Virginia at the air station. I was on different carriers at different times. Probably the longest at one time was on a carrier. It was about 3 weeks. Other times it was maybe 3 minutes. Just would land and then take right off again. I was a crewman on a TBM-3R, which was a World War II bomber, but they took out the bomb racks and put in luggage racks. So we flew the VIPs aboard, senators, admirals, and a Norwegian general once. And we flew supplies out to the ship, sometimes medical supplies, and other times plane parts. We would rendezvous with the carriers off the coast. That some of the ships we landed on was the Midway, the FDR, the Antietam, the Wright, the Wasp. And we did land on the Antietam, and that was the first carrier that had a canted deck. And that was probably 1952.
Yeah, my name is Bill Zawacki, and I served with the United States Army in the Army Intelligence Corps from 1959 through 1961. We did mostly analytical work on all parts of the government and the armed services. One of the highlights of the 2 years that I was in is my wife was with me and our son was born in Baltimore. But he's back on the East Coast again, he's in Boston, so what goes around comes around, I guess.
My name is James Edward Parks, if you want the full name, and I served in the U.S. Army for almost 11 years. Last 2 years of it I served with General MacArthur in his headquarters as a Postmaster General. However, I recount everything as far as my past. It was as an enlisted man. And everything that I ever done, really, that I counted worthwhile was as a staff sergeant, including getting married. This is the very jacket that I was wearing when my wife and I were married some 63 years ago. It doesn't quite fit, but it's coming close anyway. But I was a unit commander for a recon outfit, most outstanding thing in Korea, because I served both in the invasion of the Philippines and also in the war with Korea. That's another story, how I was still in the service for that many years, but it involved getting my wife into America, and it was very difficult then because ours was the very first marriage of a Caucasian to a Japanese after World War II. But in the Korean War, I had a unit that was supposed to, if you want to know something outstanding, we thought the war was over. We had just gotten to the Yala River, and our unit had combined, which was the whole division, all together for the first time since we went into Korea, which was 3 days after the war started there. And so they thinking that the war was over, I thinking it was over, the commanding general asked me to please go down to Busan and make sure that all the equipment could be brought up to set up for a non-military existence. And so I left my outfit, and consequently, I'm the only living member of that unit, because while I was not with them, the Chinese had entered into Korea, and they'd crossed in several miles, and we were unaware of it, and they were behind us, And so when I left, my outfit, as usual, went up to that border where China and Korea joined, and I was not with them, and they let them get there, and then when they tried to leave, every man was killed. I didn't think it'd still bother me.
Yeah.
It does, but that's in the providence of God. He had other things for me, for my life, but I enjoyed the military, and I enjoyed serving with General MacArthur, who I knew quite well, for the 23 months that I served with him as Postmaster General after I entered the Department of the Army Civilian Service. We had rank, though, just like everyone else. And I enjoyed it. I would have still been there. Well, no, I wouldn't. I'm 84 gone. I'm 40 anyway. I wouldn't still be there. But it was because of my wife. They just, at that time, they did not allow Japanese to marry Americans, and we had done it, and it was, in a sense, illegal. So we fought battles for 5 years just getting her here. But the military, the United States military, is one of the greatest things that I ever count in my life. Other than becoming a pastor and preaching the gospel all my life for these last 43 years, there is no greater joy. Either those two things are in my memory. And now I'm in the ministry, and I love it with the same fervor that I loved being in the military. I enjoyed being in the military. Somebody said it was because I was so small, and I always had a pretty good rank from the very beginning. 6 months after I was in the Army, I was in the Philippines, and I was promoted quite fast. But I was a small man, and then the rank meant everything, so there wasn't anybody bigger than me, and I enjoyed that. But I'm sure it's not that way today. But it was some great memories, and I cannot remember bad ones. I know I received the Bronze Star, and I was telling my wife today, I really don't really remember the circumstances around me getting it. I had to read up, and it really doesn't say much. It just says for meritorious service, but it doesn't tell me what I did. At least I didn't run anyway, and that was a different thing. But I believe that would bring it up today. I'm doing that which I enjoy immensely. I enjoy ministering to the people of God. I enjoy spreading the gospel of God, and I'll continue it till God takes me home. That's about the story of my life.
My name is Sachiko Rose Parks, and I came to America 1953, December, Christmas Eve. Before the war, everything tradition, and have to follow the parent guiding what I say, how to eat, everything, mannerism, everything. My family is the 27 generation, very old, so keep that way. So everything, go outside, breathing, you know. So everything have to be watching parents' eyes. My family is pretty strict, all samurai race. So, the life in Japan. That time World War II, so Japan was very poor. Always fight for food to growing up. World War II finished, and the American soldier came. Everybody hiding, scared to death. But I have worked for Japanese company, so I have to front, and the men is all hiding. So, and starting sign language to communicate American soldiers to operate a building or something. So I met my husband. He is very young and skinny and small. So not scared, so I can able to talk. Yeah, he asked me to dance. No, I don't know what is dance. Dance means the Japanese, traditional dance. That's what I know. But the men and women dance together. Then he teach me and many different strange things, but wonderful, completely different in Japan. So and keep talking, and starting, and our love is growing. Very difficult to marry, but 1946, the first and American and the Japanese marry. And first we try to marry. There are many kind of problems. Both side of family and the government all go through, but finally marry. To now, 63 years our marriage, and America is wonderful.